So in terms of a plan of attack, look, we started this, the safety spectrum was set aside for public safety. We're going to continue this battle in the name of public safety. And so as we approach this, the FCC has taken their action. They're entitled to do it. I think it was interesting that, some of the commissioners were changing their votes from like voting affirmatively yes to just concurring, because I think there is concern about the process, about the outcome. And so, there are legislative approaches, there are legal approaches. And so we're sort of kind of evaluating all of our options as we look forward to make sure that, one, we want to try to make sure, as we've said all along, if they're going to put unlicensed devices in to the lower 45, that they don't interfere with the safety critical messages that are in there. We've said all along, we're open to sharing, just make sure that there's no interference, because it doesn't do much good if an ambulance can't hear another car approaching an intersection that it's about to run through. So yeah, that's kind of where we are right now.
Is there I'm not completely au fait with this sort of whole legal system in the US.
So look, I mean, I think there's two things. I mean, as I said, there's a legal approach and there's a legislative approach. And there have been a number of very important legislators who have weighed in and said that we don't think that the proper process was followed. The latest one was Senator Cantwell from Washington, who sent a letter to the FCC the day before asking them not to take this vote. Chairman DeFazio and Ranking Member Graves, of the T&I committee, Transportation Infrastructure Committee, said that they, did not believe that public safety was being, prioritized. And so I think, one, there's sort of a legal challenge, and you can either win or you can, look to make sure that things don't move forward at breakneck speed, so that, there are other opportunities for folks to come in. So I would say that, the odds, you never want to quote odds in terms of like what's likely, what's not likely. I think if we're going to make a case, we make the best case possible, and then leave it up to, sort of the powers that be. I think, that, Representative Dingell, very powerful voice from Michigan, she stated that this fight is not over. And I think that's where we are. This fight is not over, because at the end of the day, this is about saving lives. And, right now in America, we've been sort of all transfixed with this loss of 1,000 people a day to COVID-19. We'll get through this pandemic. Once we're through with the pandemic and we have a vaccine, then we'll still have the epidemic of losing 100 people a day in transportation. And that's not acceptable. V2X is our best tool to solve this problem. So we're not just going to sit back and let them render it potentially unusable. First, it has to get filed in the National Register. Then then there's opportunity for various challenges. So, there are a few things that we want to ensure. I mean, one, we are pleased actually that C-V2X has been allowed into the ban, because obviously there are automakers who want to move in that direction. Although again, this is a criticism of the precipitousness with which the FCC has acted here. What they've basically said is all the existing deployments around DSRC and all the new deployments around C-V2X, you're all up in the upper 30 now. Got to work it out, figure it out. You've got 1 year to kind of figure all that, and you've all got to be up there. That's just not the way that you do public safety, right? It took about 20 years to get to this point. You can't just say, figure this out in 1 year. Then there are the unlicensed devices in the lower 45, which are going to be broadcasting and, we believe, interfering with the folks that are just trying to figure their stuff out in the upper 30. So there are just a number of pathways here, and at a minimum, I think there are many entities, states, cities, transit agencies that have invested millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars into these deployments. If the FCC is suddenly going to render those all useless, there has to be some form of compensation, some form of here's a financial, some financial assistance to help you make this sort of reckless transition that they've imposed.
Yeah, the 12-month time thing, does that start ticking from now? Or is that from when it becomes,
once it's filed in the National Register?
Yeah, once it's in the register.
Let's say that we were successful in delaying this, for some time, because I think it's a reasonable thing to go to, as one strategy, as one, sort of pathway here is to say, look, this is this is a massive change being asked of agencies across the country on a very short time frame. We need more time, just first and foremost, and we need to talk about how this is funded and all these other things. And in that interregnum, there's an opportunity for Congress to pass other laws, right? Like the ultimate, body of making laws is Congress. And so if there was a transportation, a transportation bill, it could, codify things. And so again, we just don't know what we don't know. There's a whole, we know that they voted, and now it's sort of like, what options do we exercise? What are the potential outcomes? That's sort of what we'll be tracking over the next little while.
Just before we run out of time, I'm conscious of your time, but just to focus in on the DSRC issue versus C-V2X, it seems that we're talking much more, as we were, I think, when we did the podcast, about bandwidth as opposed to technology here. And are we sort of comfortable saying goodbye to DSRC eventually? Is that sort of like are we going to draw a line under that, or would it been better to try to preserve that?
Look, I think there, from an ITS America perspective, we're all for evolution of technology in the band, right? Because we're a technology, association. So, we have some members that are very pro DSRC, some members that are very pro C-V2X. I think at the end of the day, it's about getting it all to work, right? And so that's the challenge now. How do you take because if you look at the order, it basically says that DSRC is ended within 1 year, which is a massive, massive, massive impact. And, like we were just on a call with the Georgia DOT, and they've deployed hundreds of intersections with DSRC related technology. So, it's kind of hard to sit back and analyze the, market forces that move one way or another. But I think at the end of the day, what we're really focused on now is preserving the spectrum, not just for V2X technologies today, but for what we all believe is the massive demand for spectrum for connectivity going forward as more and more devices become connected and, autonomous vehicles are out there. Like most people are talking about adding more, that you need 100 megahertz in order for things to work effectively. So this idea of like shoving everything into 30 it doesn't work today, and it doesn't work for the future.
Yeah, and that 30 is possibly not even really 30 when you sort of stuff starts bleeding over into the edges of that.
Yeah, it's right, and yeah. I mean, like you sort of have to blend the sort of like technical side of it, but at the end of the day, people have said that we need a 10-lane highway in the future for all this stuff, and the FCC said, well, you had a 7-lane highway, and we're going to make it a 2-lane highway. And please, sir, can I have another? No, thank you.
And does is this sort of like a party political thing? Will the change of administration have any effect on this, do you think, or is the FCC fairly independent from?
So the FCC is not part of the administration. However, the administration appoints new members to it. So there's some I would say lag in, changes at the FCC as opposed to the other executive branch agencies, which just roll over fairly quickly. So it is an independent agency, but I would say that the Biden administration, I think, will have a much less laissez-faire attitude when it comes to some of these things. And USDOT has been engaged in this fight, but I think that had they been a little more assertive earlier on, the FCC may not have taken this action. Maybe they would have. I'm not here to criticize them at all, but I do feel like if there is a window of opportunity for a Biden administration early on, to preserve the safety spectrum, I think there'll be some appetite for that. But I can't speak for them because I don't.
No. But anyway, as far as you're concerned, the fight isn't over yet, and there's still a chance to preserve some of this spectrum, and you're going to be continuing that fight for the foreseeable future anyway, until there's a final resolution.
Yeah, I mean, to quote one of your leaders, we shall fight them on the beaches, we shall fight them in the hills, we shall never surrender. So I don't want to get too Churchillian about it, but again, what is frustrating is that you have virtually every voice in transportation safety saying the safety spectrum should be preserved. The U.S. Department of Transportation, every single state Department of Transportation, transit agencies, first responders, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, I mean, bike and pedestrian safety folks. And at this time, when, particularly here in America, there is this, in order to deal with this pandemic, we should listen to scientists and experts. It is just extremely confounding that the FCC has been like, let's not listen to any of the experts who are weighing in on this. We're just going to do what we want to do. And so they wouldn't listen to us during the listening period, even though all of these comments came in. So now we'll look at other measures.